just a wonderful experience. And then you get to see this animal the size of an elephant that is docile and gentle and as curious as you are.
Just gonna bring her back a little smidgen as we lift her up. Okay.
Today on This American Land, habitat for the manatee. This is not your average house call. A dedicated team checks out these hefty patients at their winter home.
You know, there's parts of the canyon that'll just bring tears to your eyes.
And so at this point, all of the water of the river has been taken out for human consumption.
One river, two very different stories. How lovers of the Colorado are protecting the flows.
The array of diversity here in the southern Appalachian Forest, just astounding.
All this and more, now on This American Land. Funding for This American Land provided by the Weiss Foundation and the Turner Foundation.
Welcome to This American Land. I'm Caroline Ravel. This week, I'm reporting from Crystal River, Florida.
And I'm Bruce Burkhardt. But just for a moment, let's call it This North American Land, because this week I'm coming to you from Mexico, about 30 miles south of the Arizona border. And not too many years ago, this place would have been underwater, because this is where the Colorado River used to flow.
And so at this point, all of the water of the river has been taken out for human consumption.
So the Colorado River bed is now, looks like a racing track.
Exactly. It's dry and it's sandy.
Believe it or not, the powerful Colorado River used to flow through what's now this dusty drag racing track.
Miles and miles of land with nothing but sand. So as we were driving, I was thinking, you know, it used to be underwater.
Izzy Collette is part of Protect the Flows, a coalition of more than 250 businesses dependent upon the Colorado River and its tributaries. Several members traveled to Mexico to see what they hope is not their future. It's a far cry from what they experience back home.
Are you excited? Very, yeah. It's going to be amazing.
Back home, with her kayak rental business in the shadow of the Hoover Dam, Collette depends upon the Colorado for her business, but knows that's only part of the equation.
Healthy flows in the river affect a lot of things. So not only the livelihood of people in Las Vegas, you know, it affects the ecosystem and the wildlife.
Outdoor recreation supports 20,000 jobs in Nevada, and millions more rely on the Colorado River for drinking water, agriculture, and industry. But the Colorado's water levels have dropped 35% in the past 10 years. You can see it dramatically in Lake Mead near the Hoover Dam. They call this the bathtub ring. Since 2000, drought and overuse have caused a drop of 135 feet.
No, I think that we just need to find balance.
That is why Collette and her colleagues came here to Mexico, to see what overuse has done.
There's no evil player in this.
Jonathan Smith is the co-founder of the conservation group Blue Legacy.
No one who worked on any stretch of the Colorado River intended to dewater the delta. It was just an area that wasn't seen and it wasn't thought about. And so one structure after another went up and one allocation after another was filed. And no one thought, really, to reserve water flows for nature.
More than 24 dams and other diversion projects during the past 60 years have interfered with the river's natural flow. While once it flowed into the Gulf of California, now it's barely a trickle by the time it crosses into Mexico. It's been devastating for communities who, for generations, survived by fishing. We saw this abandoned boat in the dusty soil, a leftover from the time this land was occupied by the Cuycapa Indians. Ironically, Cuycapa means people of the river. The business owners also got a dramatic look from the air on flights courtesy of Lighthawk. Since 1979, volunteer pilots have donated their time and aircraft to conservation groups for scientific and educational flights. But Colette and the others also got a glimpse of what just a little water can do. It is called La Ciénaga de Santa Clara, a huge wetland and vital stopover for migratory birds on the Pacific Flyway, and it got here by accident. When agricultural runoff proved to be too salty to return to either the river or irrigation, a canal was built from southern Arizona that deposited that water here. A few years later, life.
You're not likely to see such starkly different environments like this side by side. Over here, with water, life. And over here, without water, death.
Welcome everybody. This is the Ciénaga de Santa Clara. This is the largest wetland in the delta and one of the most important wetlands in the continent for migratory birds.
What sprung up from that water that no one really wanted is now known as the Accidental Eden. For ornithologist Oswald Hinojosa of the conservation group Pro Natura, the resilience of nature here now supports thousands of birds.
This place was lost when the delta the dams were filling up upstream. But then by this accidental release of water, it got restored a 40,000 acre wetland.
How does this wetlands affect your economy?
So yeah, it creates probably about 40, 50 jobs for these communities. And it's a great income. Most of the tourism is coming from the U.S. And every winter we get 150,000 shorebirds just here in the Ciénaga.
Secretary of the Interior Ken Salazar says changes are needed to protect the flows for everyone.
You know, our attitudes about rivers as a public really have changed in the last 25 years, where there's now a recognition that there are values that are very important values, economic values, intrinsic to keeping some water in the flow of the river.
I think he's good.
Whether it's rafting or fly fishing or providing the clothing and equipment for those who do, business owners like Izzy Collette want everyone in the basin to get it right.
To come here and to see what seems to be a small amount of water that's taken from the Colorado River and given to this area, and what a difference that can make. And so being responsible in our uses, and also going to our elected officials and asking for what we want from them. And I think a healthy ecosystem is what we're looking for.
Yeah, these lower ones, the water would actually come over the spillways and we take people out on the river, and we try to educate them about the Colorado and what they're paddling on, and that this river doesn't reach the sea anymore. And so to be here and actually see, sand, it does really put it into perspective.
The Department of Interior is now studying ways to balance use of the river's water for the next 50 years. Colette and others have visited Washington to advocate for protecting the flows.
But I think that finally the tide is turning. People are realizing that we need to protect the flows in the river and start thinking about what nature needs in terms of water.
What was the major reason Western states negotiated the Colorado River Compact in 1922? Other states were worried California would take too much water. Some say that's still the case today.
Each year, thousands of people come here to Florida's west coast to catch a glimpse of the West Indian manatee in its winter habitat. But volunteers and veterinarians come here for a very different reason. Gentle, inquisitive, and endangered. A few thousand manatees live along the southeast Georgia and Florida coasts. Did you know manatees can live in both salt and fresh water? When the weather gets cold, they seek out refuges like this natural spring in Crystal River, where the water is a constant 72 degrees. In the same way that elephant moms teach their babies where to find watering holes, manatee mothers show their young where to find warmer water during the winter.
They're odd looking, and it's hard for some people potentially to fall in love with them. And I think where I got attached was in taking care of the babies.
We cruised this sanctuary with University of Florida veterinarian Mike Walsh. He's spent his career working with marine animals and is particularly passionate about the manatee.
A lot of what we do with manatees is based mainly on rehabilitation, which is often the trauma relationships, raising babies, and a few other things. We still need to fill in a lot of holes on how we take care of these individuals over the long haul.
2, 3, and down.
To check out the health of these animals, several are getting medical exams as they head to their winter retreat. Not an easy task for this small army of veterinarians and volunteers. The patients can literally weigh a ton. Boat strikes are the most frequent killer of manatees. Many have scars from boat propellers.
Their lungs are all along the back of their body, which unfortunately makes them bad for boats, because when they get hit, they hit the most important part of them, which is the capability of breathing.
This is a list. Don't put your fist. 126.
2, 3.
There's been both a public and scientific push to protect these animals.
They've been around for many, many tens of thousands of years. They've gone through changes in their genetics. They've gone through movements between different parts of this part of our hemisphere, but it still works for them as long as the environment is there to support them.
Besides boat injuries, these and all marine mammals are injured or killed when they get tangled in fishing gear. Walsh helped care for Winter, the dolphin, who inspired the film A Dolphin's Tale. She was seriously injured by fishing line and successfully fitted with a prosthetic tail.
Winter's shown what happens on the worst case scenario. The line can literally cut down, affect your vascular supply, your blood supply to your tail, you lose the tail.
And this has happened to manatees as well, correct?
Yes.
I mean, they can happen to their fins. And
Yes, there are a lot of manatees out there. Actually, somebody's estimated up to 10% in some areas may be missing a flipper as a result of monofilament line.
Oh, look, there's a manatee. There's a manatee
there.
right there coming into Three Sisters Springs. Manatees can go in here and rest and just hang out, and no one, divers, boats, kayaks, nothing can go into this manatee sanctuary. So if the manatees want to be left alone, they have a place they can go and just get away from people.
I was able to tour the Crystal River National Wildlife Refuge with manager Mike Lusk.
Even though they look big and fat, they're really not. They actually have just a very thin layer of blubber. They're very susceptible to cold stress, and without being able to come and be safe and rest in these areas, they could absolutely die of cold stress.
Look just about anywhere in Citrus County, and the manatee is a rock star. A day spent here is a delight for snorkelers and families seeking a more unique memory than the average theme park can offer.
So this is a great example of how you can protect the environment and protect native wildlife habitat, but at the same time allow recreation opportunities for people so they can get out and see the wildlife and get outdoors, and at the same time help the local economy.
Because federal protections have helped the population grow, sometimes the space can get a little cramped. Trained volunteers keep a close watch to make sure everyone is having a good time.
Some people don't understand that, you know, there's certain things you can and can't do, and we just kind of make sure everybody has a good time, the manatees stay safe.
Our charge as a National Wildlife Refuge is that not only are we to protect the animals under our care, but we are specifically charged by Congress to allow the general public opportunity for wildlife observation and wildlife photography. So what we try to do is find that balance. How do we let people see the manatees in the wild without hurting them? And that's a growing process. You know, there's no one right answer.
Finally, after spending the day learning about these inquisitive creatures, I got a chance to swim with them. In the water with animals, rules are strict. If you're floating next to a manatee and the manatee approaches you, it is okay to lightly touch the animal. However, you should never disturb a sleeping or resting manatee, and avoid touching an animal on its face or flippers. That was amazing. To be that close to a fascinating animal that's so large but so gentle and is such an important part of an ecosystem is truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Manatees are closely related to what other animals? Humpback whales, bottlenose dolphins, elephants and hyraxes, otters. Closest relatives of the manatee are the elephant and the hyrax, a small gopher-sized mammal.
This is the Morelos Dam, and as we've seen, it's the last dam on the Colorado River here on the border with the U.S. And while we've been considering the consequences of all these dams built up and down the Colorado, our next story takes a look at the flip side. What happens when a dam is removed? For some insights, we go to Miles O'Brien and our Science Nation report.
Time can take a toll on a dam. As they age, they are costly to repair, and the risk of a catastrophic dam break increases. But removing them can mean big changes to the community and the environment.
A lot of these communities now are trying to wrestle with the decision of whether or not to support dam removal, and part of that uncertainty is very much hindered by our lack of scientific understanding of what's going to happen when you take a dam out. 0.34. Got it.
With support from the National Science Foundation, Dartmouth geographer Frank McGilligan studies river systems to learn how dam removal might affect them. His lab has been the relatively small Homestead Dam, built more than 200 years ago along the Ashuela River in New Hampshire. This is what it looked like a year ago before the dam was removed.
We were really fortunate because we were able to get in several months before the dam came out to get all the necessary pre-removal data.
Data like this image of the Ashuela captured using a laser-based ranging tool called LiDAR, which can peer beneath vegetation, showing the Ashuela's former riverbed from centuries ago.
What they're able to do is pick up very detailed centimeter scale topographic elevation.
Now McGilligan is taking a set of post-dam LiDAR images to pinpoint where the river is currently flowing.
We'll be able to document a topographic snapshot before the dam was removed and a topographic snapshot a year after the dam has been removed.
LiDAR doesn't penetrate water, so grad student John Gartner resorts to a little help from a GPS device.
And as part of that GPS analysis, we're able to get centimeter scale topographic information.
McGilligan also studies riverbed sediment to track how the path of the river is changing. He's already detected notable differences since the dam's removal.
What we've also seen from some of our field analysis is that there's been a couple of feet of bank erosion in some places. In other places, we see up to a couple of feet of bank deposition as well.
For McGilligan, it's all about shoring up what we know about how rivers flow in order to make smart choices when it is time for a dam to come down. For Science Nation, I'm Miles O'Brien.
The first known dam made by humans was built between 2950 and 2750 BC by the Egyptians. It was 37 feet tall, made of rubble masonry walls on the outsides, and filled with 100,000 tons of gravel and stone.
A walk in the woods can be enriching for the body, mind, and soul. In the Cherokee National Forest in Tennessee, many of the people who enjoy these lands are also working hard to protect them. They're urging Congress to designate thousands of acres a wilderness area so it can stay wild forever. Gary Stryker has our story.
Ready for a hike? Let's go.
It's a good beginner hike. We get a lot of attendance here so people can come on up and get a flavor for this area and why it should be protected without having to expend a whole lot of energy.
Jeff Hunter knows the plants, animals, sounds, and silence of Tennessee's Cherokee National Forest.
This is a Fraser magnolia. We also have umbrella magnolias and striped maples and sourwoods.
On this autumn day, he's leading hikers on the Brookshire Creek Trail.
This is a sassafras tree. The way the limbs come out, it's got real character.
The former telecommunications executive now heads the Tennessee Wilderness Campaign.
Here's another native plant. This is dog hobble. You know, whether it's amphibians or mammals or wildflowers or tree species or fishes, the array of diversity here in the southern Appalachian Forest is just astounding.
Hunter wants to make sure nearly 20,000 acres in this region will be protected forever.
Because our national forests, unlike our national parks, can be logged and developed. Wilderness, however, is the highest form of protection for our public lands.
The Tennessee Wilderness Act of 2011 would protect this land in the Cherokee National Forest. If passed, visitors could continue to hike, birdwatch, fish, hunt, camp, and ride horses here. And there is no funding required for this protection.
How you doing? Good.
Different hikers get different inspiration from this forest. Janice Wilkie is an artist.
I'm doing a whole series of paintings on Bald River Falls, and so this Bald River hike is especially meaningful to me to see the headwaters of the falls where I have never been here before.
Woodworker Rudd Montgomery says he gets ideas for the chairs and tables he creates just by watching how trees grow in this wilderness.
We need to save as much of this kind of land as we can, as much wilderness area as we can gain. It'll be there for a lifetime and for our kids and grandkids to be able to experience it.
Ready? Yep. Anything that will take us off the trail, we remove. What we have here is a crosscut saw. This saw was made probably back in the 1800s. They don't make these anymore. These are called the saws that sing. When you get this thing going, you'll hear the saw going ying, ying, ying.
For Jim Holland and Bill Hodge, this was also a work day. They give their time and their muscle to keep these paths clear for others to enjoy.
All these trails are maintained by volunteers. Jim and Bill are a big part of that stewardship effort.
We watch the Spald River flowing by us and think about most all these wilderness areas in these southern Appalachians are the source of clean water for millions of people downstream.
And this is why this trail remains open right here.
I can't think of anything I'd rather do than be doing this. It's sort of a second career for me. I'm a second generation Marine. My dad taught me years ago that you should give something back.
Another day further, it'll get you to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park.
The people are great, and we've learned a lot.
Veteran hikers and fly fishers Carol and Joe Policia explored this trail for the first time.
I would say it's a sense of inner calm. You know, some people like to meditate, those type of things. For me, a walk in the woods does the same thing, and then it lasts and lasts.
Things are changing too fast, and we need to take time and step back a little bit and, do some work to hold on to some of this wild stuff.
Wilderness protection has historically had bipartisan support. Tennessee's 2 Republican senators introduced the current bill, which is also supported by the U.S. Forest Service.
We take a big tent approach. There's so many different values that come into play, whether they're faith values, whether they're sportsman values, recreation values, folks who are concerned about clean water, clean air.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Many local businesses get a boost from visitors to the forest. Kelly Foss owns a deli and general store.
Most everybody is here for either biking or camping, a lot of campers, motorcycles. People love the wilderness and they come up here and vacation. A lot of vacationers. From all over the world we get them.
Hunter has guided hundreds of visitors through these woods. He says it usually takes just one trip for most folks to grasp how valuable this resource is.
Take them out here, let them fall in love with the place, let them see the light through the trees. It's an easy sell.
How did the shrub known as dog hobble, found in Tennessee, get its name? Bear hunters nickname the plant. Bears can charge through the bushes, but dogs get stuck in it.
Here's what we're working on for a future show.
Hikers, mountain bikers, and families in California have a huge new playground. Hard to believe this is the same place where more than 1 million U.S. soldiers trained.
For all of us here at This American Land, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
For more information about this program, visit thisamericanland.org. Funding for This American Land provided by the Weiss Foundation and the Turner Foundation.